Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Edge Verse Techcast, your go-to place for everything related to NXP software, tools, and enablement, specifically tailored for all those processors and microcontrollers from NXP. And I'm one of your co-hosts, Kyle Dando. Today, Bridgette, I am super excited to help announce that NXP is providing long-term support for embedded developers that choose to use the MCUXpresso SDK.
Yes, Kyle, but there are so many questions about long-term support. So we got together to determine who would be the perfect guest to help us break it all down.
That's right. And we've had prior guests who know the SDK really well, like Peter Lucas, Jimmy Chen, Jerry Zhang, and a lot of others.
But we arrived at the same conclusion.
Max
Palumbo.
That was terrible.
It was pretty good.
All right. Well, not to be confused with Mad Max from Beyond Thunderdome. Max, why don't you take a minute to reintroduce yourself to the listeners? You were on a prior episode, but why don't you let the listeners know who you are and why we may have selected you to present LTS?
Thanks, Kyle and Bridgette. Good to be back. Always happy to have a chat with the TechCast audience. For the new listeners who don't remember me from my last appearance, I'm a product manager as a part of the MCU and connectivity product line. The team that I lead is responsible for what we call runtime software. That's all of the code that runs on our Cortex-M microcontrollers. The reason why I think both of y'all thought of me when it comes to LTS is this is something I've been pushing for many years at my time with NXP. And it's quite exciting that we're now able to announce it. We've done the first release and we can start sharing our vision for LTS with customers.
Well, Max, we're thrilled to have you back. And let's start with the big picture. For developers hearing long-term support for the first time, what exactly does that mean? And why has it been such an important initiative for you?
It's a great question. So the key message with LTS is stability. What we've done historically with MCUXpresso SDK is we've had a mainline approach to development. And so that means every quarter we come out with a new release. In between the releases, we have a monthly snapshot of what's to come in that production quality. When the new release comes out, we of course fix bugs, we provide security updates, but it also includes new features, new functions, support for new silicon. And over time, the architecture on the mainline branch changes as the state of the art in the software industry evolves. A lot of customers like that. They want to be on the bleeding edge. They want the latest and greatest features and functions. Not every customer, however, is okay with that. There are others who prefer to have something that's a little bit more stable. If the test cycle for your product, let's say it's longer than the 3-month development cadence of our SDK, adopting new change isn't always beneficial if it means you have to redo testing. So that's why we introduce LTS. This is to provide a stable baseline for customers who don't want to be on the bleeding edge and who value stability more than they value new functionality.
I appreciate this perspective because LTS isn't about adding more features. It's about giving developers confidence that the software they're building on stays stable over time. Now let's provide some details about this thing called LTS.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, I get to ask the first question, Max. People often ask, how does this benefit my software development, right? You've visited customers, even internally, people have asked, why provide LTS? You've provided this short summary numerous times, but can you detail 3 benefits that a customer will get if they adopt this LTS release for the MCUXpresso SDK?
Definitely. So the main benefit of LTS is that if you are in the middle of releasing a product, imagine you're an NXP customer, you're in the middle of releasing a product, you're going through your test cycles and you find a bug. You have to fix the bug. So how do you do it? With the mainline SDK, the way that you do that is rebase. That means you have to take a new version of NXP software that includes the fix. That's not unusual from a software development standpoint, but it's not always desirable depending on the point of the test cycle that you're in. One of the big advantages of LTS is NXP will backport bug fixes and security fixes to that release. Backport meaning we develop on mainline, we fix on mainline, and then we take the patches for the security vulnerability or the bug, and we pull it back onto the branch that we tagged as LTS. The main reason why that's an advantage is features don't change, functions don't change. If you've built on top of a set of APIs, those are going to remain stable. And the only thing you get is the fixes that you want. You don't have to deal with support for new silicon or new features. The reason why that's a benefit is, as a customer, your cost of maintenance goes down a lot. You don't have to invest the time and the resources to do a rebase if all you want is a small bug fix or a security patch. Now, the second benefit to LTS, and this is something we feel is unique, is we are committing as NXP to do these backports free of charge for 2 years. The release that came out last week, which kicked off this discussion, that's 26.6.00 LTS. We will support that branch with free security updates and free bug fixes until June of 2028. That's 2 years of free support from NXP, where customers don't have to make the investment of rebasing to take the bug fixes. The third point, which I touched on a bit already, is about stability. When you take these changes, it's only the fixes that you want. The APIs don't change, the versions of libraries don't change, the overall architecture of the code doesn't change. We want to make it as easy as possible to take just the fixes so that your code as a customer, the business logic that you build on top of NXP's software, can be stable. And we provide you with the fixes you need to launch and maintain your product.
I really like that breakdown. Security, stability, and reducing maintenance effort. Those are benefits developers can appreciate regardless of what they're building. And one thing that really stood out to me is that NXP is taking on a lot of that work that development teams would normally have to do themselves. Okay, now we're going to switch things up a little bit. Kyle spends a lot of time co-hosting with me, but he also spends a tremendous amount of time working with Max and the SDK team.
That's true.
So I think it's only fair that he gets to answer one question. Are you ready, Kyle?
Well, let me put on my thinking cap.
So you've talked about the benefits. Now explain how NXP is actually delivering on those promises. Where can developers find the LTS release? How are updates being handled? And what should they expect over the life of an LTS branch?
All right, well, that's a great question, Bridgette. Thanks for asking me that one, because I think I might have the answers. As you mentioned, for the last couple of years, Max presented the request to have LTS, and we've been working on the process, what's included, how we're going to deliver it to the customer. So let me try to break it down for you, because it did definitely make new requirements for our development team. So the first thing to be clear with the listeners is we're going to deliver LTS on our GitHub distribution of the MCUXpresso SDK. If you are interested in the LTS that Max just mentioned, every year during the June release on GitHub, it will be tagged as the LTS branch. As Max mentioned, that SDK will have that added suffix. We're going to put -LTS after the 260600. Let me break down that tag and that name. It's kind of obvious, but we use calendar versioning to name our releases. The 2606 references that this is the June release of 2026. So that's pretty straightforward. The trailing .00 will be used for us to indicate the patches or the updates made to that initial release. Then you'll see that -LTS. So when you clone the SDK and you get it into your development environment, you want to make sure that you have a -LTS as the one that you're using. That is where you're going to get all the benefits of the backporting that Max mentioned. So again, we are choosing GitHub. The reason we chose GitHub is because the delivery mechanism is best suited for delivering this version-controlled software. As you get these security or bug patches, it's easier for you to navigate the changes and see the commit messages and things like that. That was the first thing we decided on. We had to build up our GitHub release process, and now it's ready to support LTS. The second point I want to cover is what's going to trigger those updates to the LTS package. We've established a couple triggers that we're going to start with. These may change over time, but getting started, we needed to talk to our software team and let them know this is how we're going to develop with the LTS branch, and this is when we're going to provide updates for the customers. The most important thing that's going to be provided to the LTS is those secure vulnerabilities. NXP already, as Max mentioned, is making constant changes and updates to our software to address these secure vulnerabilities. They're usually addressed by the PSERT team. It's the Product Security Incident Response Team. Most companies have them. NXP already has a process in place. So when those PSERT notifications come into our software team, we address them. However, those patches, as Max mentioned, have been only applied to the mainline branch for most cases. And so then the customer would have to do that rebase that Max talked about. Now, if a secure vulnerability occurs and it's of a high priority, we're going to update the LTS branch within a month's time. We're going to have to make the changes, and then we're going to test it, but then they'll get those updates. The important thing there is, if it is a high priority, it could be within a month after the appropriate amount of testing is done. At the worst, it would be in the next quarterly release. So that LTS branch will get that security vulnerability at the appropriate amount of time. The second trigger that we're going to use for LTS are severe bugs. NXP categorizes them as S1 or S2 severity bugs. These will be applied to the regular release. So the bugs will be added to the LTS branch, but we'll update them on the scheduled quarterly release. They won't be triggered earlier like a secure vulnerability will be. And if no security or bug patches are made during the quarter, then we won't update the LTS branch. It will only be updated for those secure vulnerabilities or for those bug patches. All right, now the third point I want to make is, why will there be an LTS every year? Why isn't it every 2 years? Why isn't it every 6 months? This was decided to allow new products that NXP offers to enter into an LTS SDK. We wanted to give new products an LTS distribution, and we feel like customers, after they start evaluating a new product, within those 12 months, they're going to want to move into that stable SDK production. So at that point, we want to be able to offer them an SDK that has LTS.
That's actually simpler than I expected. Once developers understand there's a dedicated LTS branch and a predictable update process, it becomes much easier to see how this fits into their development workflow. Nice job, Kyle. But maybe let's bring back podcast host Kyle to the episode. He's a little bit more fun.
Yeah, that was a little rough. I'm not as good as the typical engineers, but it was worth the shot, and I'm glad that I was able to help the listeners understand a little bit about the LTS. All right, so now Max, back to you. So long-term support. Customers may have a couple questions about this term. Let me break it into these two leading questions for you to answer. First question, NXP is qualifying this SDK release as long-term support. Does that mean that NXP has not been offering long-term support for the devices, or only now that we have an LTS release?
That's not exactly what we're trying to imply. Historically, we've provided a very long-term software support for the silicon that we release. We don't state explicitly what the software lifecycle is for our devices, not in a way that's been easy to find, but generally if we have a stated silicon longevity on our part, we'll have software available to match the part. But that was done with the mainline approach, where if you want changes to that device, let's say bug fixes or security updates, you must also accept the churn of being on the mainline branch. That means you're updating third-party library versions, you're rebasing to new versions of the SDK, you're adopting new features, new functions, you are accepting changes to the architecture in order to get that fix. In this context, when we say LTS, we're really talking about a particular branch or release of the SDK. So it's long-term in the sense that we stabilize on a set of APIs that provide a set of features and functions. And we make a commitment to customers who adopt that release that we will support you for 2 years with free of charge updates, those updates being bug fixes and security patches. So you don't have to continually rebase your software if all you're looking to pick up is the bug fixes and security patches that impact your product. The mainline branch continues doing its thing where we innovate and we provide new features. And we do still view mainline as a production quality software product we expect a lot of our customers to use because they value the bleeding edge innovation that comes from that release. What LTS is doing is trying to provide stability for customers who place that with a higher priority than bleeding edge. In the context of LTS, that's what we're trying to convey with this release.
Okay, perfect. Now, the other trending topic and question that we talk about every once in a while is, how does this apply to CRA requirements? You are very involved in our compliance to the Cyber Resiliency Act. Detail to the listeners, how does the SDK's LTS release align with the CRA?
It's a great question. There's a lot of active discussion in the market around CRA, what it means, how we plan to address it. The NXP philosophy on CRA is that MCUXpresso SDK is itself a standalone product, independent from the hardware that we offer. So there's two product offerings from NXP under the guidelines of the CRA. There's the silicon itself, and then there's the source code we provide, MCUXpresso. The key point here is that the SDK itself is the product, not the individual tags or releases within that SDK. For CRA compliance, we can achieve our minimal legal requirements with the mainline branch. The mainline branch will exist for more than 5 years, as outlined in the guidelines from the European Commission. We will provide security updates and bug fixes on the mainline branch, and the strategy for maintenance on the mainline branch will be rebase. Now, not everybody likes rebasing. Not everybody wants to pick up new features and functions. Not everybody can live with the churn of the mainline branch. And so we introduce LTS not primarily as a way of dealing with CRA. We introduce LTS primarily to provide stability to customers who value fixed APIs with bug fixes and patches only over the bleeding edge innovation that comes from mainline. LTS augments our CRA strategy in the sense that we provide a much more stable baseline for customers who value that stability with the 2 years of free support. Now, something that we're actively working on is 2 years of support may not be enough for every customer. That's what we're able to commit to do for free. In the future, we will offer through our professional support program the ability to extend the lifetime of this branch with a paid support contract. We'll have more details to announce on that in the coming months and years as we get closer to the first time this paid support window will kick in, but that's an option as well. To summarize for CRA, MCUXpresso is itself a product. The mainline branch with a rebase strategy is how we meet the minimal legal requirements that we're obligated to under CRA for customers who value stability more than bleeding edge functionality. We augment that minimal legal requirement with LTS as value add on top.
Perfect. So we've covered what LTS is, why it matters, how it works. Now let's finish with the obvious question. If someone listening wants to start using the new LTS release today, what's the best place to begin?
The best place to find it is on GitHub. Actually, the real best place to find it is if you have the MCUXpresso extension installed in VS Code. You can clone it directly from there. You can access the source code and you can start playing with the code today.
And for me, I would send them to the updated SDK documentation. There, they'll get a summary of the LTS delivery that we just covered today. It's all documented. And also the complete instructions on how to get started with the SDK. Everything from installing it to building it and getting started with their first project. They'll find instructions for using the LTS release in a CLI environment or using the MCUXpresso VS Code extension that Max just mentioned.
We'll make it easy by including links to both the GitHub repository and the documentation in the show notes so everyone can explore the new LTS release after the episode.
Today, everyone, we covered what long-term support means, why NXP introduced it, how developers benefit from a stable software baseline, and how easy it is to get started with the new LTS release.
A huge thank you to Max for joining us today. It's always great having someone who's been involved from the beginning to help explain not just what a new capability is, but why it really matters to developers.
Thanks, Bridgette and Kyle, for having me. I'm super passionate about this topic, and I'm glad I get a chance to deliver this message to the TechCast listeners.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an Edge Verse Techcast. And if there's a topic you'd like us to cover or a guest you'd love to hear from, let us know in the comments, and we look forward to hearing your ideas.
All right, until next time, everyone, keep innovating, evaluate NXP's new LTS support for the SDK, and we'll catch you on the next Edge Verse Techcast.